There are stories that cling to the edges of human fear, stories that never leave you, no matter how hard you try to convince yourself they aren't real. One of those stories is older than time itself. It has haunted cultures across the globe, whispered in myths and recorded in old journals that are now too fragile to touch. It is the story of the doppelganger, the evil double, the shadow of yourself that is not supposed to exist. Some say seeing your doppelganger is an omen of death. Others believe it is a creature, born from a darker place, that takes the shape of your body and begins to steal your life. But what if I told you that one man, a man who lived in the quiet suburbs of Pennsylvania, saw his double with his own eyes? And what if I told you that what he saw was only the beginning of his nightmare? This is not a tale for the faint of heart. This is a descent into obsession, terror, and the horrifying truth that sometimes the most dangerous person you can ever meet is yourself. Ethan Clarke was an ordinary man, 32 years old. He lived alone in a modest two-bedroom house on the edge of his hometown. He wasn't married, didn't have children, and spent most of his evenings behind a computer, working late hours for a software company that barely noticed him. He wasn't special, not in the eyes of the world. But fate has a strange way of choosing its victims. It all began on a Tuesday night, the kind of night where the sky feels heavier than usual and the silence of the streets seems too perfect to trust. Ethan had worked late again and stopped at a convenience store for a coffee before driving home. The security cameras outside the store were buzzing faintly with static, their red recording lights blinking like half-open eyes. He stepped back into his car, put the cup into the holder, and started the engine. That was when he noticed it. Across the parking lot, under the dim glow of the flickering streetlight, someone was standing. At first he thought nothing of it, just another late-night customer, maybe waiting for a ride. But then the figure stepped forward, into clearer light. Ethan's breath caught in his chest. His coffee slipped from his hand, spilling across the seat, because the figure was him. Same face, same clothes, same tired expression. It was like staring into a living mirror, but one that shouldn't exist. The double stood perfectly still, his lips curled into a faint, unnatural smile, a smile Ethan had never seen on his own face before. And then, without a sound, the double turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadow of the street. Ethan sat frozen in the car, his mind scrambling for answers. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe he was overtired. Maybe it wasn't real. He wanted to believe that, but deep down he already knew what he saw was real. That night, Ethan barely slept. He tossed in bed. Images of the identical stranger burned into his mind. By morning, he tried to shake it off. He convinced himself that exhaustion had played a cruel trick. He went to work, sat at his desk, and buried himself in code. But when he returned home that evening, something was wrong. The front door was unlocked. Ethan was certain he had locked it. Inside, nothing looked stolen, but the air felt heavy, different, as though someone had just left. His laptop was open, sitting on the table. A file he didn't remember opening was displayed on the screen, a folder titled Clarke. His hands trembled as he clicked it. Inside were photos, hundreds of them, photos of him, walking to work, eating dinner, sleeping in his bed. They weren't selfies. Someone else had taken them. And in the bottom right corner of every photo, reflected faintly in mirrors or glass windows, was the same smiling figure he had seen in the parking lot. Ethan's life began to unravel. He told himself it was a stalker, someone who looked like him, pretending to be him. But that explanation didn't last long.
Ethan tried to fight back. He bought new locks, changed the security system, even installed cameras around his house. But the doppelganger was always one step ahead. The cameras never captured him directly. Instead, there would be flickers, moments of static, glitches that made Ethan's skin crawl. Sometimes the cameras would record Ethan himself, walking through the house at times when he knew he was sleeping. But Ethan wasn't walking. He wasn't awake, which meant the doppelganger was. Every night he felt its presence stronger, the whispers in the dark, the faint click of a light switch, the soft drag of footsteps that always stopped when he listened. It was as if the house had been divided in two, his world and the doppelgangers, and the walls between them were collapsing. One evening, Ethan went to the grocery store. It should have been an ordinary trip, but as he stood in line, the cashier gave him a strange look. She scanned his items slowly, then said, "Back again? You must really like those energy drinks. You just bought the same thing an hour ago." Ethan froze. He hadn't been there earlier. He swore it. "Excuse me?" he asked. The cashier blinked, confused. "You were just here. Same hoodie, same shoes, same face. You handed me a $20 bill and didn't even want the change." Ethan's mouth went dry. He paid quickly and left, his pulse racing. The doppelganger wasn't just shadowing him anymore. It was out there, moving freely, blending perfectly into his life. And it was better at being him than he was. Days blurred into nights. Ethan's reflection began to betray him. Sometimes in the bathroom mirror, his reflection wouldn't move when he did. Other times he'd blink, and his reflection would smile when he hadn't. He stopped trusting mirrors altogether, covering them with towels and sheets. But that didn't stop the doppelganger. Nothing did. It was inside his world now, inside his skin. One night, Ethan woke gasping for air. His chest was heavy, as if someone was sitting on him. His eyes flicked open, and he saw it. The doppelganger, leaning over him in bed, its face inches from his own, its breath cold, its eyes burning with something inhuman. It whispered a single word into his ear, "Mine." Then the room went black. He woke hours later, drenched in sweat, trembling violently. The house was silent. But when he stumbled into the bathroom to wash his face, he found something that shattered what little sanity he had left. On the mirror, scrawled in condensation as if from a finger dragging across steam, were 3 words, "You are me." From that moment on, Ethan was no longer sure of anything. At work, co-workers looked at him with suspicion. Some said he had snapped at them earlier, though he remembered nothing. Others swore they'd seen him in places he hadn't been. His boss pulled him aside, saying, "Ethan, you've been acting strange, aggressive. Are you okay?" But Ethan hadn't been aggressive. He hadn't done any of it. The doppelganger was sabotaging his life, piece by piece, replacing him in the eyes of everyone who mattered. The more Ethan fought to prove his innocence, the guiltier he looked. The more he resisted, the more the doppelganger thrived. Narrator lowers voice, more chilling. And then came the final straw. Ethan received a call one night from his mother. Her voice was trembling. "Ethan, you scared me today." He froze. "Mom, what are you talking about? You came to the house. You wouldn't say much. You just stood there, staring. I kept asking if you were okay, but you smiled in this awful way. I've never seen you look like that before. Then you left without a word." Ethan nearly dropped the phone. "Mom, I wasn't there." There was silence on the other end. His mother whispered, "Don't say that. Please don't say that." And then she hung up. Ethan realized the truth. The doppelganger wasn't just tormenting him. It was destroy.
Ethan was no longer sure if he was awake or dreaming. His days melted into nights, nights bled into nightmares, and everywhere he turned, he was haunted by himself. The doppelganger was no longer hiding. It was bold now, mocking him, taunting him, showing itself in ways that stripped Ethan of every last shred of control. One night, Ethan left his bedroom and found himself staring into his own living room. There, sitting in the armchair, was his double, calm, relaxed, reading a book that belonged to Ethan. The doppelganger looked up, and for the first time it spoke clearly. Its voice was Ethan's voice, but darker, hollow, like an echo from a place that had never known light. "You're tired," it said. "Let me help." Ethan gripped the wall for balance, his entire body trembling. "What? What do you want?" he whispered. The doppelganger smiled, that same cold, perfect smile. "I don't want," it said. "I am." And then, with a blink, it was gone. After that night, Ethan stopped leaving the house. He was terrified that if he stepped outside, the world would no longer know the difference between him and the thing that wore his face. But the truth was worse. The world already couldn't tell. His boss called him, furious, claiming Ethan had stormed into the office, shouting at coworkers, throwing papers across the room. His neighbor pounded on the door, yelling about Ethan screaming in the yard at midnight. Even the local police came by, warning him about disturbances reported in his name. But Ethan hadn't done any of it. He hadn't left his home in days. The doppelganger was everywhere now, spreading like a virus, stealing his life one piece at a time, and Ethan was powerless. Narrator's tone sharpens, slow, dramatic pauses. The breaking point came on a stormy night. Thunder shook the windows, rain hammered the roof. Ethan sat in the dark, clutching the baseball bat, heart racing, waiting for the inevitable. And then, a sound. The front door opening, footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Ethan rose, sweat dripping down his face. He moved toward the hallway, and there it was, the doppelganger, walking through his home like it belonged there, its skin pale, its eyes glinting in the dark. It wore Ethan's face perfectly, but not his soul. "Stop!" Ethan shouted, raising the bat. The doppelganger tilted its head, amused. Then it spoke again. "You don't belong here anymore." It lunged. Ethan swung the bat, but the doppelganger caught it effortlessly, its strength unnatural. With a single motion, it shoved Ethan backward, sending him crashing into the wall. Ethan gasped, dazed, vision spinning. And in that moment, the doppelganger knelt beside him, its cold hand pressing against Ethan's chest. And then, Ethan felt it. His breath being stolen, his heartbeat slowing, his life draining away. The doppelganger's eyes glowed faintly as it whispered, "Shh! Let go. You're mine now." Darkness swallowed him. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was standing in his own living room. But something was wrong. The world looked strange, dim, almost gray. He looked around and froze. On the couch sat the doppelganger. No, not the doppelganger. Ethan, his body, his face, his life. The real Ethan was gone. What remained was a shadow, a hollow reflection, a prisoner. Narrator's voice turns chilling, slow. Ethan pounded on the walls, screamed until his throat burned, but no one heard him. His doppelganger had taken everything, his house, his voice, his identity. And as the days passed, Ethan realized the cruel truth. He wasn't the man anymore. He was the reflection, trapped in the other side of the glass, forced to watch as the doppelganger lived his life better than he ever could. His friends believed it was him. His family embraced it. Even his mother kissed the imposter on the cheek and said, "You seem happier these days." No one knew. No one ever would. Ethan Clarke was gone. Replace